Hey, hockey fans, I'm Gino Retta. Welcome to episode 10 of the 7-Eleven Overtime podcast. I've spent 4 decades working in this game we love. Fortunate enough to meet some of the legends of the game. Saw them come into the league, shine in the league, and now they've moved on to life after the game. This podcast gives us a chance to relive some great memories, find out where some of these amazing guys are right now, what they're up to, and they tell us some great stories. This week, we're joined by Bryan Trottier, a centerpiece of the New York Islanders dynasty that won 4 straight Stanley Cups, 6 Cups as a player, another as a member of a coaching staff, won the Calder, the Art Ross, the Hart, the Conn Smythe, elected into the Hockey Hall of Fame in 1997. Also a singer, a performer, and now an author. Pleased to welcome to the show, Bryan Trottier. Bryan, welcome, my friend. Great to catch up with you again.
Like I said earlier, Gino, you're getting a scruffy Bryan Trottier today, but it's a pleasure to be on the show, guys. Happy New Year to all your listeners, too. Thank you.
Oh, man, it's so great. I'm so looking forward to catching up to you, Bryan. And it's just one of the things that our viewers and our listeners need to know about you is you're probably one of the most down-to-earth guys I've ever met in the game, given the magnitude of what you've accomplished, and yet none of it gets to your head. You're just a real guy. Probably your roots from Ville Marie, Saskatchewan, population 120 people. Is that where it all comes from, Bryan?
I think we keep it pretty simple out in Saskatchewan. I don't know, but I'm proud of most of the hockey, all the hockey guys. Really, pretty down to earth group. They're very team minded. They don't take things crazy serious. It's all in. We understand it's a game. We understand of controversy. I avoid all that junk. I just say to myself, I am just a dad, a grandpa right now, and just enjoying the hockey world in the sense and the hockey family. So to come on your show always is fun, Gino, and talking, old hockey stories and the good old days is always great fun. You get with the alumni, and it's just pure laughter. Don't care if it's Daryl Sittler, Tiger, or my old buddies Dennis Potvin, Billy Smith from the Islanders. We get together. We have good stories, good laughter. We always talk about something fun. So keep things simple. Keep moving forward.
You and I share a boyhood idol. You and I both idolized Jean Beliveau as kids growing up. Because of Jean Beliveau, 4 was my favorite number. Red was my favorite color. LeGros Bill was a legend. And I kind of want to refer back to the days when you were a kid, when your dad was out clearing the water by the dam so you can skate outside. You had an interesting conversation with your dad that was kind of a foreshadowing of things to come. Recount that for us.
Oh my God, there's so many stories between me and my dad. I think the one you're talking about is when why do I always want something? I don't know if that's what you're thinking about. Yeah. The really kind of the fun thing, when dad was always pretty serious, and he would he was fun a lot of times, but when it was time to be serious, he always had these one-liners. And I'm back behind him. He looked good in the saddle, and I was behind him on my little horse, and I always wanted to be like my dad, ride like him, and kind of sit in a horse like him. And I said, "Hey, Dad, how come I always want something? How come I'm always wanting something?" And he just turned around really quick in the saddle, and he just looked at me, and goes, "Because when you stop wanting, you die." And he turned back in his saddle. I said, "I don't know if he said that just to shut me up or whatever, but." I was like, oh my God, I'm going to always want something. I'm going to always, I don't want to die. When you're 10 years old, that thing stayed with me, the whole stuff. So staying hungry and never taking things for granted and appreciation, all that stuff, fun stuff just kind of forges that little moment in my whole brain. So no, that was a kind of a fun little moment with me and Dad.
You mentioned your dad, and you gave us a real good sense of what he was like in terms of his attitude and his no guff kind of. Your ancestors are one of the most famous Métis Cree bison hunting clans in Canada. You got the multicultural upbringing. Your dad's a Cree Métis Chippewa, and your mom was Irish. Interesting combination. A lot of feistiness involved in there.
Oh yeah.
Talk to me about the early days of little Bryan growing up in a small community with that kind of multicultural background, and quite frankly, some of the stuff that you had to face because of it.
Well, our little area of Ville Marie is very diverse. It's community blended French and a lot of mixed French. I'm sure there was native French in there that didn't know that they were native, but there was Norwegian, there was Scottish, there was German, and everybody had a nickname. Nobody was picked on to death. We all had nicknames for everybody, and last names seemed to like be the biggest part of it. But we're all calling each other names in the schoolyard. Next thing you know, we're playing together, playing hockey together, and going on road trips together, and bonding to beat the band. And our parents were all friends, and it's community minded out there. So everybody's got to kind of grab a hold of the rope, and neighbors are neighbors, and everybody's trying to help everybody out. And Dad was kind of very well respected. I'm sure he had some discrimination growing up in that generation. Him and Mom, blending, Native with Irish, and I'm sure they had a little bit of it. But our generation, we were taught early, like Mom and Dad said, they're just jealous, and we're like, what? Yeah, discrimination is just a form of jealousy. I don't know what they're jealous of. We don't have much, but maybe you're because you're a good little athlete, or because you're good at other things, and and I'm like, oh my God, yeah, athletics, and horseback riding, and all these fun things we do in the ranch. Kids would come down and come play with us, and we get them bucked off the pigs and have all these kind of fun with it, and with the town kids, and they'd come back for more. And it was really kind of fun to blend that, getting away from Valmarie and going on to tournaments and stuff. And people find out you're Native, you hear little whispers and little nicknames. And I'm saying to myself, big deal. Okay, we're going to beat you anyway on the ice. So it didn't bother me. You kind of get thick skin because of it. And I think Mom and Dad kind of taught us early to not react to it in a negative way, just understand what it's all about. It really helped me going through life, and because I wouldn't react to it, so people just stopped calling you those crazy names. And I think stigmas and nicknames are a horrible thing, and thank God this society and our NHL, I think, are getting away from a lot of them, making a lot more things recognized, and let's be mindful and respectful and all that stuff, which I think is wonderful. And my generation now, my children's and grandchildren's, it's just going to improve as we just keep going along. That acceptance and recognizing diversity is part of our biggest culture and society. Then we're all going to be fine because of it.
We're in conversation with Hockey Hall of Famer Bryan Trottier. Bryan, you just this is the 7-Eleven Overtime Podcast. I'm Gino Reda. You just put together a book, All Roads Home, A Life on and Off the Ice. As I hear you talking about your upbringing and the mentality your parents tried to teach you, as you were putting this book together, did you find it therapeutic to kind of get back and start to delve back into those old stories of what it was like a kid, what it was like growing up through all this, turning adversity into a sense of jealousy, into a sense of drivenness? Was it therapeutic for you to go through all this?
There was moments of that, Gino, but what I found was I was telling these stories for a long time, like over the course of my career, and then after my career, going into First Nations communities and talking about, pride and respect, and just recognizing your own attributes and your dreams, and pursuing those dreams, and having your talents, recognizing your talents, and finding help, all those things that I talked about over the years. And people would say, you should write a book. And I'm like, well, I don't want to write a book. I'm still coaching. I'm playing. I didn't want to give away any secrets, but at my age where, like you're influencing, I think, younger generations, and you're in a position where you can maybe help a few people. And I said to myself, you know what? So I put together an outline. We found a publisher that thought there was a good story here. And my friends at Penguin Random House and Stephen Brown was a big help, putting everything in order and jogging my memory. So Jesse Thistle did a wonderful job before. Tiger jumped in, my daughter jumped in, and there's just a whole bunch of fun stuff and positive stuff. And really, my life has been a lot of positive, a little bit of negative, overcoming some of the challenges, and just kind of letting people know that I'm just kind of normal. It's not like I'm
Bryan, you're not normal.
I am normal.
No, you're not.
I am normal in a sense, but not normal in that sense. I understand what you say, but we're all just kind of normal in the sense that we come from somewhere. We all come from a different background, but we share that same wonderful dream of playing in the NHL and wanting to accomplish the greatest achievement, just raising a Stanley Cup over your head, being part of a championship team. And that was my drive. That was my motivation. And that's kind of where I come from, my roots. Yeah, Saskatchewan, all roads home. There's no place I go that I don't represent my little Saskatchewan roots and my Canadian roots and my family and my hockey family, and people recognize that. That's a little bit my identity. And so all roads home is just about me being, just a Canadian boy with a big dream.
I love the fact that you are so humble, and I mean, despite all the stuff that you've done, it's crazy. Six Stanley Cups as a player, 4 straight with the Islanders, 2 with the Pens, another one as an assistant coach. You won the Rookie of the Year, the Art Ross, the Hart, the Conn Smythe. In 18 seasons in the NHL, you only missed the playoffs once. When you were accomplishing these things, and you think back, I would think personally, it would be awfully tempting to think back to the people who were derogatory towards you and say, my parents are right. They were just jealous. And you know what? Now they've got reason to be jealous. Did you ever have a moment to feel like that?
I think we all do. I think we all have that moment where we go, nah, I did it anyway. But I think for all of us, I think especially hockey. Look at Gordie Howe and humble Gordie Howe was. Wayne Gretzky was telling a wonderful story on TV the other day about Bobby Orr talking about his greatest goal, dropping a glove behind his own net while he's killing off a penalty rag at the puck, and then going back, picking up the glove, and then going down, score a goal. I'm like, it's really wonderful to see, the greatest players, how humble they are when they talk about themselves and some of their accomplishments. And again, it just reflects so well on all of us. And I think that's just Canadians in general. And I think it's kind of like rubbing off on a lot of the American hockey players. Maybe they come from the same background and roots, and you meet some of the Europeans, and it's really wonderful how they talk about team way before they talk about themselves. And it's wonderful to kind of share the praise, and when someone talks about my accomplishments, well, it reflects well on my team, my teammates, my coaches, my parent, it just reflects well on everybody. And you never, like Dad said, don't stop appreciating where you come from. The butte was just outside our window in that country, so just always remember that. All those wonderful things, appreciation and recognizing who helps you. It's not just done by myself. It was, you got to work hard. You got to dig in. You got to contribute. You got to be dependable. All that fun stuff about being part of a team. And when you can kind of lead by example, or you can contribute, and those things are special. And when all of a sudden someone hands you a award, and next to the biggest one was that Stanley Cup. I love being handed that Stanley Cup and being part of that wonderful moment with players and sharing that moment with fans and hockey fans and walking down. So it's really, don't come to, oh, there was Bryan Trottier, 500 goal scorer. Oh, there was Bryan Trottier, 7-time Stanley Cup champion. I like hearing that. And it's really kind of fun to talk about those wonderful stories. And the first time touching the cup and feeling the names that are engraved on it, how cool the Stanley Cup was to touch. Because Gino, like a lot of us are afraid to go up and jinx ourselves and not touch
for sure
before you win it. So when you finally win it, it's like, yes, I can feel it mine. And I actually asked Bill Torrey to take it home, and I talk about that in the book, and wake up in the morning and see the sun shining on that thing coming through the window, and it was like perfect. And I said, those moments you can probably dream about them, but when they happen, it's way better than you can imagine.
Oh, for sure. You can't even imagine they could possibly be as good as you thought. You mentioned the book in conversation with Bryan Trottier, author of All Roads Home, A Life On and Off the Ice. It's available now. It's the 7-Eleven Overtime podcast. I'm your host, Gino Reda. You mentioned Wayne Gretzky, and I want to follow up on something because you and I are roughly the same age. So I was fortunate enough to be in the business covering your career as you're making it through. And for people who kind of now look back on it, they may find this next thing I'm about to say a little bit hard to believe, but it's totally true. From 80 to 83, you guys won 4 consecutive Stanley Cups. You were rock stars. You were freaking rock stars. But there was another guy who was a rock star at that exact same window who was winning Hart trophies, Art Ross trophies, 200-point seasons in the NHL. And people were like, Gretzky's the best player in the history of the game. But there was an argument being made that in that window, it wasn't Wayne Gretzky who was the best player in the game, but actually Bryan Trottier. And I remember Trottier had this, Al Arbour had this quote: Gretzky is an offensive genius for sure, but at this state, Trotz gives you more things. Defensively outstanding, physically tough, and 100 points per year. That was the legend, Al Arbour. Do you remember that time where people were saying and making the argument and having the big debate who's the best player in the game during that 4-year window? And a lot of people were saying Bryan Trottier. Tell me what your reflections are in that period of time?
Well, it's wonderful. Like those moments are like you say, are just kind of etched in your brain. But that moment was pretty fun because we won the game. We beat Edmonton at home, and I think the score was something like 6-5 or 7-5. Gretzky had 5 points. I mean, we won the game. I might have had a couple points. But what was really fun was like the reporters come running into me and they said, "Oh, Al Arbour just called you the best all-around hockey player in the league." I was like, "Well, thank you, Al." But I think that was just Al's way of just kind of okay, let me keep his feet to the fire a little bit, because Al was just awesome at always trying to motivate the players and get the maximum out of them. I think that was just a wonderful, wonderful moment for me because I felt like, wow, my coach feels that good about me. I'm going to play my very best for him because of that. I think it kind of ramped me up a little bit, to have that kind of, praise from your coach, who probably has great respect for Wayne Gretzky. And believe me, it was no slight to Wayne, because Wayne he is offensively, he's incredible, but his leadership, like that's the thing that I always admired about Wayne and his career, was like his leadership, his ability to not only make his players better, but to inspire and kind of motivate, much like Mario Lemieux. Like it's wonderful to see him encourage players, tap on the shin pads and give them praise. And those things are leadership skills that the very best players in the world have. And yeah, like to have that kind of a compliment from your own coach at the time, and was really, really wonderful. And I think it kind of hung on me for a little while, because who's going to argue with Al Arbour?
Exactly.
Well, Al
He
Arbour
was a
said
legend.
it, so therefore it is true.
Yeah.
And Al and I talked about it, years later. Obviously, I had a wonderful chat with him down in Sarasota. I went over to visit him when he was going through a rough time with his knee, and we laughed about it. Then he goes, I didn't do that on purpose. I said, I know, but it worked. It worked because it really, kicked me in the butt a little bit and made me feel proud, that, here we are working this thing together, winning a couple of cups, and things are going well, and we want to keep it going for as long as so we won 4 in a row. And it's impressive that we did that. We were young and we were
impressive. It's way beyond impressive. It's incredible.
I know it, but we're at it. That whole core group, we're young and we stayed healthy, and like we worked and we started believing in ourselves. And it all came from Al and Bill, and just that whole atmosphere and culture that they had built. And we were just a huge part of that. We're a little part of that huge thing, and everybody felt really good about themselves and what they were bringing to the game. And we all kind of like just kept rolling with it, and kind of looked at each other, and whether Butch Goring, myself, or Bobby Bourne, or Anders Kalur, didn't matter where we come from. We needed everybody to grab a hold of that rope. And some of our unsung heroes, like Gordie Lane and Dave Langevin. My God, I sat next to Gordie, and I had more fun with Gordie in the locker room than people can imagine. Because boy, his stories are hilarious. I love his stories because he is one fun guy to hang with. And but people don't talk about these guys because they're not like headliners. But boy, they're sure appreciated on that Islander team.
You are part of one of the greatest lines. We always love to talk about lines. You were part of one of the greatest lines in hockey history, like as you say, the dynasty, the 80, 81, 82, and 83 Stanley Cups, the trio Grande. Yourself, Clark Gillies, and Mike Bossy. Sadly, we lost both Clark and Mike way too soon, just at ages 67 and 65, which is incredibly sad. What was it like to be a part of that line? The different elements. I mean, you were probably one of the best two-way centers in the history of the game. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Clark brought the protection and the security, and Bossy, one of the greatest finishers, goal scorers of all time. His career ended far too soon. What was it like to be a part of that triumvirate?
I use 2 words: dynamic and magic. I think what Clark brought was dynamic and magic, and what Mike brought was dynamic and magic. For me, I was a distributor. I got to push the puck to the left side or snap it over to the right side, and those guys had an ability that few have. And you're right, Clark had the presence. He gave us that that ability to play our game, not worry about getting our heads taken off.
Yeah.
And, Mike had that ability, the confidence to score goals. And when you play with someone with that kind of confidence, your confidence level goes up. And to room with Mike on a daily basis, whenever we hit the road trip, boom, Mike and we're talking hockey, and he wants to score goals, and we're talking about how we score goals. And, it didn't matter if it's over dinner or watching a movie or sitting in a room. It just seemed like we were always talking hockey, and that kind of dynamic and desire, because we shared that same desire to win. And the three of us, I mean, we didn't talk just about scoring goals, but we would talk about contributing so that we could win. And to be a part of that dynamic, magical group is very, very special to all three of us. And we celebrate. I still celebrate with their families over the Christmas holidays and throughout. We're gonna continue to celebrate their lives with Lucy Bossy, her daughters, and Pam and her daughters. I mean, it is really a special relationship that I never want to lose. To be a part of their families is as important as being a part of that dynamic trio on the ice. And it was Clark who gave us our name, believe it or not. He stood up in the locker room. They're going to have a contest or something to say, okay, we're going to name the Trottier Gillies Bossy line. He goes, no, it's the Gillies Trottier Bossy line. He wanted his name going first. And when he stood up, he was a big man in the room. He goes, you don't have to have a contest. We're going to call ourselves the Trio Grande. And the name stuck. And I loved it. I was like, all right. He did like That's John Wayne, the Trio Grande, the Trio Grande. Clark was like a Westerner at heart, and I just loved the name that he chose, and to be a part of that little history and the magic. And I talk about some stories about our Trio Grande line in the book, and what the Tampa Bay is one of the wonderful ones. I'll let the readers read that story, because Mike, with his magic, hadn't played for a few years. He just goes out and scores 7 of our 8 goals in the championship game. But he's a special hockey player, obviously, and a great friend. To lose both of them in 1 year at this time, he talked about grieving. I hurt for a while, and I realized to myself, so you know what? I am going to celebrate these guys. I am going to talk about them. I am going to remember these guys for a long time. And just like I talked to Daryl Sittler and Tiger Williams about Boris Solomon, that is to watch that unfold in front of my eyes at the Hall of Fame was just spectacular, because I felt the same thing that Lanny and Daryl and Tiger were feeling about my two buddies. And it's painful, but it's also extremely emotional. And to be able to talk about Boris Solomon and the magic he created during his career was spectacular. Guy Lafleur, we lost Guy Lafleur, and his magic. I still have great memories of my playing against Guy Lafleur, and moments where he was coming down, and I'm like, well, look at that hair flowing.
With the hair going.
He was flying. He looked like he was flying. I'm like, who skates faster than Guy Lafleur? But there's just so many great moments. You play against great players, and there's stories about every one of them.
It's really interesting, because I keep hearing you refer to the guys who are mentors to you. You obviously, in the book, you talk about, the book is, by the way, titled All Roads Home, A Life on and Off the Ice, about the mentors that you had. You're, idolizing Jean Beliveau, Tiger Williams, and how he was a great mentor to you, and your thoughts on Gillies and on Bossy as well. You were also, you won a pair of Stanley Cups with the Pittsburgh Penguins, and during that ride, there was a young guy who came over from the Czech Republic who barely spoke a word of English. You were this giant in the game. You already had 4 Stanley Cups. You could have just taken the ride, but instead you said, no, I want to help this kid. And, well, you helped him to become, ultimately, when he finally does retire, because he's still playing now, and Grande. Tell us about your relationship with Jaromir Jagr.
Well, he's a unique kid, and just big smiles. When I walked in the room, and he beat me into the room when we checked in, because I came in from New York, and he was here a couple of weeks ahead of time taking English lessons. So he was in the hotel, and I ended up rooming with him through training camp, and then for about half of the season before we got Yuri Hrdina from Calgary. And Jaromir spoke very limited English. So I walked into the room. Here's this kid with a big smile, just barely speaking English and watching MTV, learning English from MTV. So everything he said in English was from an MTV song. So, hey, Jaromir, how do you like Pittsburgh? Oh, I like cherry pie. Like he was from Motley Crue or Warrant or whatever the group was. But he was fun because he was hungry. He was whole. You could see the skill immediately. Like his puck skills, like his stick handling skills, protecting the puck. He was from the waist down. He was a horse, and from the waist up, he was still a young boy. So he had to work on his upper body strength. He had to learn the North American game of give and go, soft picks, short passes, give and go. And he was such a good student. He worked on his shooting with Riccio after practice, one timers, because he wanted to stick handle right into the goalie. Every goal he thought had to be a deke or from 2 feet out. Yeah. And boy, he was definitely high skill. We saw it right away. But he wanted to learn. He called me Big Brian, which I thought was kind of comical because he was
about a foot shorter.
Taller than me. And but he, I'd ordered food for him, and he trusted me. We built this immediate trust, and he was wonderful because on the bench he would always ask good questions. His limited English and my limited Czechoslovakian, but patience was a word I learned early, and I don't remember the word offhand, but it was one that he understood. That okay, patience. I got to be patient because he wanted to be in the power play. He wanted to be playing every minute of the game because he's young, he's eager, he wants to learn. But we're building Bob Johnson's. He's of that college mentality where he's a rookie, he'll get his time, and all of a sudden, Scotty Bowman comes and plays Jarmir's legs off the next year, and that was great for Jaromir, it was great for Mario, it was great for our whole team because here's this young kid ready to take on some leadership role. But he was hilarious off the ice. He made me laugh as much as anybody because he had all these rookie things that he wanted to drive a car. I talk about the car in the book, and he wrecks the car and kills a deer, and oh my God, what a kid, and big smile about it the next day. And I'm like, Jaromir, you are one. Slow down, for crying out loud. He's putting all the speeding tickets in he didn't know he had to pay these things. He thought he was just saving them up.
Just stick them in the glove compartment, souvenirs later, autograph and give it back.
Oh my God, yikes. But he is a special kid. He's still playing, and I love him. He's got great history here in Pittsburgh.
Do you ever keep in touch with him at all? Do you speak to him at all?
Not near enough. I reach out to him every once in a while here and there. We do crisscross paths, and whenever we do, he just lights up, and I love that. I just love it.
We can't put him in the hall trots because he won't retire.
He's a special person. He's like Gordie Howe. They just go and go. The ever-ready batter just keep going and keep going. And but he's an athlete. I mean, he is built like an athlete. He took great care of himself, and nutrition. Today's training is just spectacular. We all should have had that. Like our era should have had that. The previous era should have had that. But it's the players now, there's a lot at stake, and they're taking good care of themselves, and us hockey fans, all of us are the beneficiaries because we see the speed of Connor McDavid, the skills of Crosby and Kane, and this generation is spectacular.
Yeah, I wanted, as I'm talking about the stories you're telling in the book, you were a storyteller long before you ever picked up pen and paper because you love to tell stories. And one of the ways in which you did it was in your music career. Something we should point out, your family, a pretty big family, didn't have a lot of money growing up. So you guys had a little side hustle, which worked very well for your family. And you were right in the midst of it as a songwriter, guitar player, singer. Tell our audience a little bit about that.
Well, it was fun growing up with Dad. Dad played music every day. Like he had accordion, a guitar, a fiddle, and we got something first thing in the morning before chores. Him and Mom were up early making breakfast, and that was our alarm clock, was the music. And we had to sing a song at family gatherings growing up. Probably till age about 10, 12. I had to get on stage, sing a song at a dance or a wedding or something. Dad played music at funerals, rodeos, gymkhanas, all kinds of different events. And Christmas, New Year's, he was the band, and there was a wedding going on. All of at age 14, he just put a bass guitar on me. Said, "You're gonna be the bass guitar player in the band." And I didn't know anything. He taught me 3 chords. Said, "Just follow my fingers," and I just followed his fingers. And And basically, he taught me how to play bass guitar by following his fingers and learning the keys.
And you're still doing it, right? You're still doing it at some events.
Well, I know all these songs that we've been playing for years and years and years, but the thing I had to do is I had to teach myself how to play guitar, rhythm guitar, because I knew Dad's fingers, so I knew C and F and G and all the chords that went with everything. So I just kind of, and over the years, like through my hockey career, basically, I could strum a guitar pretty good, but I couldn't make a living at this crazy music. But post career, when Steve Shutt and Tiger Williams talked me going on stage with this group in Vancouver, I went up and sang a couple songs, a Merle Haggard classic and a Willie Nelson classic. They go, "Oh my God, you got to do this on the ice, and you got to do this at these events." And so I started doing more and more in my post hockey career. People love it because they just see a different side of Bryan Trottier. And I talk a lot about it. My sister she keeps the band going in Saskatchewan. Dad passed in '95, so she took over. She calls herself Navajo, and her boys are really good musicians. So I jump on the stage and pretend I'm a musician again. But it's really fun to be a part of that culture, that part of that music culture, which is really my dad's legacy. He's grasslands country. We sing all the country classics of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and now it's the 90s and 2000s. They're all great country songs, and people know them. They're, Folsom Prison. Clarky loved to sing Folsom Prison. He was my Johnny Cash. He liked to go Folsom Prison. He did The Gambler, Kenny Rogers, but he was an entertainer on the microphone. So I just had to play the guitar. But being a part of music, I think music brings people together in a great sense. And you don't have to be great at it. You gotta play and have fun, and everybody else will enjoy that too. That's what we were taught as a youngster. And so when we get together with our family, there's still lots of music. Everybody grabs a guitar, everybody sings a song. It doesn't matter if it's cousins or my sisters, my nephews, and even my nephew, Monty's son, my brother's son in Indianapolis, has his own two-piece band, him and his wife, and they're spectacular. And I'm like, oh my God. And a lot of it is just a little bit genetic, I think, because of my dad. But I think a lot of it is because we just enjoy music, and all of us enjoy music. And I'm always looking for singers, Gino. So if you want to jump in,
no,
do your
won't be damaging your stuff.
I'll just drum along with the guitar.
I love the fact that you're so proud of your heritage. As a young Italian who came to this country, immigrated to this country when I was 5 years old, my family, it was difficult because you always had to do the battle between not let people know what your background is, because the way I used to think in my mind was I could get away with just being normal if I allowed it to. But then when you talked about your heritage and you talk about what your parents, and when I had to explain my parents were not educated and we came from a very poor background, it was always difficult and always a challenge to figure out how much to be able to say. I'm just so impressed, Trots, we're in conversation with Bryan Trottier, Hockey Hall of Famer, about how nothing's off the table for you. That it's all like, not only is it, you're incredibly proud of it. And one of the things that's been said about you is that you're one of the most accomplished Indigenous athletes in our country's history. And it's something that you don't downplay, you celebrate, and you do so much speaking in order to encourage kids down the road to have that same kind of mentality. Talk to me about how important that is to you and how important it is to get that message out there in the speaking engagements, because I know you take a lot of time still to speak to the young Indigenous children to pass that message on.
Well, it's wonderful to be able to talk about it. I think and again, it goes back to my parents. Mom's Irish, dad's First Nations. Got a little French in them, and for a lot of us, we all come from various backgrounds. We should all take pride. That's what I talk about. So like in First Nations, it's not just the French. There's also Scottish. There's also there's many mixed blood in the First Nations community, and we should all take great pride in it. There's no embarrassing backgrounds. Like that's embarrassing. Big deal. There's embarrassment. Everybody's got a little something. Yeah. I think that's in the closet, so to speak. But I always say that we just keep moving forward. That doesn't define you. What defines you is the things you overcome, the challenges that you overcome, the things that they're your dreams, the things that you want, all those things that you appreciate, and all those talents that are within you. Those are the things that should be celebrated, and those are the things that define you. And so when people look at me, they say this kid from Saskatchewan plays guitar, had a wonderful hockey career, is now a grandfather. And, those are the things that I'm most proud of, and where I come from. And my background is like spectacular. I look at it and say, oh my God, my grandparents, both sides were so genuine and so down to earth, and neither one had money. We thought, oh my God, we're so rich and all this, but we have 3 meals a day. We have good food. We have, just all this wonderful laughter in our lives. And when we get together, there's just even more laughter. So those are the things that we can celebrate. And that's what I talk about. And going into these First Nations communities and getting the invitations, that's the nicest thing. And John Chabot has done a wonderful job in organizing our Aboriginal team and making sure that we get out as a group and not just one-offs. And so we go in as a group now, and it's really wonderful to go with Aaron Asham and John Chabot. And we all talk about where we come from, how we got there, and our dreams, and how we take pride in where we are and what the things we've had to overcome. And everybody's got challenges, but they don't define us. It's what we do to overcome them. And that's the message, is just like, stay in school, get yourself educated, make healthy choices. And I think the teachers really appreciate us coming in. The parents do. The kids get a big kick out of seeing us. But I have to tell you this fun story. Lanny McDonald and I go into this school, and we're doing Hockey Day in Canada. I think it's just outside Kamloops. And we're doing this First Nations visit, and they bring the mascots, the Stanley Cup. We've got the Stanley Cup ring. He's got his Calgary Flames gun. I got my Pittsburgh Penguin ring. And here's the hierarchy of celebrity. Stanley Cup is first, then the mascots, then the Stanley Cup rings, and then who are you guys? Who are you guys again? We didn't matter, and we loved it because the kids had no clue, because we played like in the 70s and 80s. But it was wonderful to see the excitement that they had for the Stanley Cup, the mascots, the Stanley Cup rings, and then us lowly little hockey players who magically won the cup, won the rings. It was really kind of a fun, brought us down to earth. Like, Lanny, isn't this awesome? And we chuckled about it. But no, it's really kind of wonderful to celebrate where we are, where we're coming from, and where we want to go. And I'm a big believer, much like I just stole it from Walt Disney. I'm a big thief, but a lot of these things I steal from people. But Walt Disney said, you got to keep moving forward. And I really did. I used that my whole career. And it was a wonderful little mantra in my own little back of my mind. Keep moving forward. Okay, that doesn't matter. I want that. And I want to get there, and I've got to get this, and I need him. I need this. I got to be part of it. And it's really kind of kept me motivated, and kind of keeps me kind of grounded a little bit too, because you reminded all the time your parents, your grandparents, and where you come from, and not to be embarrassed about it, celebrate it, and just be and appreciate all that wonderful culture that I grew up with. And that's my message when I go into the schools and the communities and talking about my fun career and my history and what I want for the next generation of student athlete.
You are a legend, my friend. Every time I talk to you, I respect you more and more.
We have fun every time, Gino. This is great.
My gosh. It's amazing, Trotz. I mean, to follow your career over the years, the 7 Stanley Cups, including the one that you won as an assistant coach, and the Art Ross, the Hart, the Conn Smythe, I mean, all the stuff you did. But the fact that you're using that platform to touch people's lives. And now through this book, again, the book is All Roads Home, A Life on and Off the Ice, an autobiography of Hockey Hall of Famer Bryan Trottier. Bryan, it has been amazing catching up with you, my friend. Happy 2023. And thank you on behalf of hockey fans and on the kids who are still listening to you on a daily basis, even though you rank behind the mascots and the rings and the Stanley Cups.
Hey, good times for all of us. 2023, everybody. Pleasure to be on the show, and continued successes. Always fun to bump into you. Call anytime. Love our time together always. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Bryan.
All the best.
Hockey Hall of Famer, author, and true legend, Bryan Trottier. The Overtime Podcast is proudly presented by 7-Eleven. Before leaving the rink, order your favorite Slurpee, fresh, 100% premium Arabica coffee, hot from the oven, pizza and wings, pint of ice cream, or even a carton of milk, eggs, loaf of bread from the 7 Now app, and Team 7-Eleven will have your order ready for pickup 24/7. Hey, if you missed any parts of the show, don't worry. Visit our website at overtimepodcast.ca, where you can both listen and subscribe to future shows. 7-Eleven's Overtime Podcast can be found on the iHeartRadio app, Spotify, iTunes Podcasts, or any of your favorite podcast platforms. Until next week, I'm Gino Reda saying so long, hockey fans, and thanks for joining us on the 7-Eleven Overtime Podcast.